In ordinary times, businesses need to do more with less and be agile enough to keep pace with fast-changing technology and customer demands. The need is accentuated now that we are in the new normal. As the global pandemic has brought major disruption to almost all economic and social activity, the pressure for businesses to innovate and transform has multiplied. To help small and medium-sized enterprises meet this challenge, the HKTDC is organizing a variety of innovation-focused events. This month, we are presenting a series of virtual conferences and events, including the HKTDC SmartBiz Expo and Asian E-Tailing Summit. They provide a one-stop platform for enterprises to explore opportunities in the stay-home economy, business transformation trends, and ways to succeed in the post-pandemic world through innovation, creativity, and the application of technology and design. I welcome you to join these events where hopefully you will get actionable insights on how your business can thrive in the new normal.
Hello friends from all over the world. I'm pleased to join you today online for this splendid Christmas present for businesses in Hong Kong, the Asian region and beyond. 10 days in December, filled with virtual business conferences, events and shows, beginning with the 4th SmartBiz Expo during December 2nd to 4th, and culminating in the Asian E-Tailing Summit from December 9th to 11th. In between, unwrap and enjoy the dazzling business opportunities, filling the Hong Kong International Franchising Show, the Business of Intellectual Property Asia Forum, and Design Inspire. For this and more, my thanks to the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. As Margaret noted, SmartBiz Expo and the E-Tailing Summit showcase the promise of today's stay-at-home economy and the digital transformation that can help your business take full advantage of it. Yes, even in challenging times, opportunity abounds. This has certainly been an unprecedented year for challenges, with the COVID-19 pandemic profoundly affecting economies all over the world, Hong Kong included. Just about every sector of our economy has been hit, from food and beverage to private consumption, tourism, and investment. SMEs in particular are facing multiple challenges: disruption to operations, substantial drop in revenue, liquidity shortage, heightened export credit risks, and more. The Hong Kong SAR government has introduced a series of wide-ranging relief measures through the 2020 to 21 budget and the 3 rounds of anti-epidemic fund, amounting to more than 300 billion Hong Kong dollar, that has helped keep business afloat while protecting jobs and supporting the people of Hong Kong. Beyond that, however, there is an imminent need for SMEs to turn to innovation and technology, to look to digital transformation, to find their way clear of the COVID-19 aftermath as quickly as possible. In this regard, the Hong Kong SAR government has launched a distance business program. It is designed to help companies maintain their operations and services during the pandemic by adopting IT solutions. The program, which closed at the end of October, received more than 38,000 applications from over 32,000 companies. About 95% of the applications came from SMEs. Earlier this year, the government also enhanced its technology voucher program, which subsidizes local companies that adopt technological solutions to improve productivity or transform their business processes. Not surprisingly, the number of applications received soared from a monthly average of 50 in 2017 to more than 600 a month over the past 6 months. And I'm pleased to say more than 3,000 applications have been approved. That, ladies and gentlemen, represents a success rate of more than 93% and involves over 500 million Hong Kong dollar. This year has seen the rise of an unprecedented stay-at-home trend for work, school, and leisure. That presents substantial business prospects for companies shifting to e-commerce, home digital entertainment, or e-business in general. But more than a short-term opportunity, innovation and technology is central to Hong Kong's future. And the Hong Kong SA government is aggressively pursuing that future. In the past 3 years, the government has devoted over 100 billion Hong Kong dollar to a great variety of I&T programs and initiatives. They range from infrastructure provision and R&D to investment funding and talent development. And the government will continue to boost the development of I&T as another priority sector for Hong Kong. We may still have a ways to go before the pandemic loosens its painful grip on the local and global economies. But by embracing technology and digital transformation, our companies can accelerate their business rebound. In doing so, they also help Hong Kong to respond to the COVID-19 challenge. For instance, a monitoring system using Bluetooth low-energy wristbands paired with a dedicated mobile app and geofencing technology has been developed for the monitoring of those subject to home quarantine. An interactive digital map and dashboard have been created to keep the public informed of the pandemic situation. And an incubatee of the Hong Kong Science Park has successfully developed a real-time monitoring system which remotely monitors body temperature, pulse, and blood oxygen level in real time to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. In March to April this year, a special call for the public sector trial scheme was launched to support application of technologies in combating the epidemic in Hong Kong. A total of over 102 million Hong Kong dollar has been granted to more than 60 insightful projects, some of which were from technology companies conducting R&D activities in Hong Kong. Ladies and gentlemen, the SmartBiz Expo and the E-Tailing Summit have everything you need to help you and your business find a rewarding and sustainable future. For that, my thanks again to the TDC. I wish you all the best of business at TDC's December fairs. A Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the HKTDC SmartBiz Expo and Hong Kong International Franchising Show 2020. The 3-day event will provide simultaneous interpretation services in English, Cantonese, and Mandarin. You may choose the audio channel next to the video frame. And you're also welcome to raise questions in the Q&A box, and the selected questions will be asked in the Q&A session towards the end. Without further ado, the first session, Riding the Wave of Stay-at-Home Economy and Managing a Remote Business, will now begin. We're delighted to have Ms. Denise Tsang, the Hong Kong news editor of the South China Morning Post, to be the moderator of this session. So, Denise is an award-winning journalist specialized in political economic issues, and she's also a foreign moderator, team leader, and multimedia fan. So may I now pass the time to Denise. Denise, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. During the pandemic, from civil servants to the private sector, many of us have experienced working remotely, such as from home. As Hong Kong braces for the new norm, how can we manage the business or staff more efficiently and turn challenges into opportunities? Today, we have an expert, Mr. Robert Glazer, who is one of the highest rated CEOs in the United States, to share his experience in the stay-at-home economy. Near the end of our discussions, we will take some questions from the online audience. Let's welcome Robert.
Thank you, Denise. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Sorry, I had a lag there. So the journey for us started in 2011. We had a team of about $1 million in revenue in US dollars, and we were growing in the US. We had not planned on building a remote company, but we were in a very niche field called affiliate marketing. We needed experienced people, and we just had a hard time finding talent. So we did it actually, was as trying to solve a pain point. We started hiring people from across the US, but pretty soon we realized that we really liked this flexibility, and we began to think about a vision for a remote culture that could be scalable, not only nationally and globally with employees, that would allow us to retain the flexibility and the performance-oriented culture that we had designed. And nine years later, after going all in on that remote work strategy, we were able to grow our revenue almost 1,000%, grow from 7 to 170 employees, and more importantly, win over 25 different Best Places to Work awards in the US and around the world, despite not really having a place to work. And none of that I really could have imagined at the start of our journey. So for many of us, 2020 has not been what we expected. So we didn't really know that the world would shift so drastically toward virtual commerce and remote work. And you know, no matter when the pandemic subsides, there are definitely permanent changes that have accelerated how we work and how we live that we all need to pay attention to. Many people think that 2020 has been a little bit of maybe a lost year. They're waiting for the year to end, but I think really more than anything, it's been a year of learning. And with the year almost over, I think it's really important to think about what we're going to say about 2021 and what we're going to learn and how we're going to take forward some of our key learnings from this year into 2021. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I think businesses can win the stay-home economy, and then some tips for building a top remote organization, because I think these are things that all businesses that are going to have to pay attention to. And it's becoming pretty clear that many people are going to change some of their buying habits, and even though we know they're excited to travel, there's a lot more things that they're going to do from home, especially as we move into 2021. And some businesses will struggle as a result of this, but I think others that will excel, that see these changes and lean into them rather than fight them and wait for business to go back to how it was, because I don't think it's going to go back that way. So let's talk about who some of the winners are going to be. Well, one of the big winners are direct-to-consumer brands, right? These companies were already gaining market share before COVID, and I think this change will only accelerate their growth, because direct-to-consumer brands know their customers well. They're able to develop a relationship. They're able to develop that trust. And there was a big difference during COVID-19. If you could communicate with your customers, think about being a restaurant or a retailer who knew who your customers were and could reach out to them, versus someone who is a middleman or working through channels and not even know who their customers were. So I think there's been a premium value put on relationships. Last night I bought a product from a company directly that I never would have done years before, because they were offering a lot more value to buy it directly. Direct-to-consumer sales are already up almost 25% in 2020, and customers are showing that they're much more comfortable and prefer to have things delivered. There's times to go to the store, and then there's times when you're just looking for a commodity and you want convenience. So I think a lot of people who were not used to getting things delivered, especially older buyers, have realized this convenience and they're looking for it. One of the trends that we're seeing here is curbside pickup as sort of a bridge becoming a huge option, and people dedicating parking spaces and setting up their stores and their whole business to have people drive, park, and be delivered something. And I think you're going to continue to find customers looking for the most convenient options now that they know that they exist. Virtual learning, meeting, and conferences. So think about what we're doing today. I think these large in-person conferences, unfortunately, will probably be one of the last things to come back. And all organizations are going to have to learn how to harness virtual meetings, do learning and training in a different way, handle conferencing technologies. And I think companies that can make this easier for their meeting planners and their vendors and their customers will be winners. Virtual events are going to continue long after the public safety risks have abated, because for some things they're just going to be more cost effective, and it's totally new opportunities for interaction and speakers. This is not an event that I would have probably flown to Hong Kong for, but I'm able to now speak to you all from my hometown. And I think there's going to be several opportunities like that, where think about who you can bring in as speakers and how can you leverage that. And then streaming entertainment and recreational activities. This is one of the fastest growing areas right now. Adults and children are just becoming more acclimated to getting what they need at home. Companies like Peloton and Mirror and Tonal are doing incredibly well. And I think business models that have been reliant on one-to-one or small group are looking at changing, and they're saying, hey, I was doing this for 10 people before for $100 each. Like, how much would I have to charge to do it for 1,000 people on a global stage? I've seen even a lot of nonprofits turn their events global and really open up their markets, and that's going to be an opportunity for all businesses. And then we'll talk about this a little later, but in this type of environment, brands need to build these relationships with customers and directly. And in doing that, they really are gravitating towards paying for outcomes. So instead of paying for an impression or a click or a view, they're gravitating towards a field called partner marketing, which allows companies to use trusted partnerships, reach customers, and pay their partners for the outcome when they get the outcome. And it defers a lot of the risk on marketing, and it really becomes sort of a digital partnership. So with everyone moving from brand to consumer and companies not looking to do billboards but to sell things, there's just a huge rush in looking for partnerships where there is win-win and is on an outcome basis. So in terms of building a top remote organization, there's a lot of things we've learned over the 14 years of doing this. And there's 5 core qualities I've seen of all great organizations and remote organizations. And that is a clear vision, strong values, core values, clear goals and targets. And then there's 2 modifiers, and those modifiers are clarity and consistency. And so how that looks for us is, we 4 years ago in 2016, wrote a plan for 2020 called our Future Vivid Vision. And it said it's January 2020, and this is how our business is going to look and feel like, and it described it in future tense. And we didn't tell employees how, but it really set a clear path for people coming to the organization and the type of organization we were, saying, here's where we're going, here's what we're going to accomplish, and if this is exciting, you can join us, and if it's not, you might find something else that is a better fit, but we made it really clear about where we were going. And then we were always going to do that in service of our core values. We used to have 6 core values, and I was really encouraged to cut them down to 3. You really have to be 3 out of 3 to be successful in our organization. So those values are own it, embrace relationships, and excel and improve. And it's not just things that we talk about, it's how we act. So we use our core values in hiring. We use them in decisions to transition employees out. When we promote people, we highlight the core values. When we do awards and recognitions, they are the core value awards at the end of the year. And then most importantly, it's behaviors and decision making. That's how, we don't want a ton of rules, that's how we want people to behave. And so you take those vision, you take those values, and then the goals is really the scoreboard that bring the sort of vision to life and create accountability. So we've reverse engineered all those 3-year goals into quarterly and annual objectives. Everyone has their top 5, everyone has the things that they sign up to do that quarter. And that's all public in a software system, so everyone can see that. And particularly in a remote environment, this creates a tremendous sense of accountability. So everyone knows the score is, they know the game they're playing, we know what they're pushing for, and they can see in that system whether they're, red light, yellow light, or green light. And no one really likes to have a red light next to their picture. In terms of consistency, I think it's really important to do things, repeatedly. We have our company calls all at the same time and the same cadence. When we get feedback, we do it at regular intervals and in the same ways, group, individual, or otherwise. We have a core process for everything in our organization. Anyone can always push to make something better, but if they haven't done it before, we should have a process that tells them how to do it. And then we use an alignment system. There's two popular ones. One is EOS and the other is Gazelles. They're kind of known by their books, Traction and Scaling Up. But these have all these tools all put together in terms of sort of managing an organization, transparency, cadence, value, and they just make it easy to create consistency in your organization. So the other modifier is clarity. When we do our check-ins with people, again, that alignment, we say, hey, how are you doing on the core values? How are you doing on the quarterly priorities? And how are you doing on those 5 job responsibilities that were on your application when you came here? And it gives us a real sense of how people are doing in a non-subjective way. We have open book management. So we say, here are the numbers, here's where we're doing. We have a monthly scorecard. We share that with our team. Where are we green? Where are we yellow? Where are we red? Again, not together all the time. We're really clear about what's the score, how are we moving there, how is everyone playing their part. And we talked about our vision. We're really clear about the vision, so people know where we're going with that. And then last is the rule of 7 times. I think particularly when people are remote, it takes repeating some things 4 or 5 times. Maybe someone wasn't all there, they didn't hear it, to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And finally, that alignment system can help you again with just clear. It just has all the stuff that you need in there. So those are sort of the basics. But when you're starting with a remote environment, comprehensive onboarding is critical. So the worst thing you could have happen as an employee, just start with nothing going on. And I think having been a remote organization for so long, it's forced us to create a world-class onboarding program. So when I started my first job, I showed up that day. They said, oh, we didn't know you're starting today. Just go shadow this person. A lot of our companies have really poor onboarding programs because someone's there and shadow them. When someone's just starting at their computer, you need to deliver for them, what it is they're going to do. So we script out new employees entire first 2 weeks. So when they're training on our video system and our curriculum, when they have shadowing, when they have meetings, when they have live training, and in the midst of all of that, there's people reaching out to them and checking in and seeing how they are. So it's critical to develop an onboarding process. And then also things tend to get blurred together. I think it's really important to keep a structured schedule. So this was a clever thing someone had put together, a parent during COVID-19, but you should have a consistent wake up time. You should schedule in things like your break and your lunch and your exercise. And you should think about when you want to do different types of work, or else without the social cues, the whole day can sort of blend together, and work and home life will really blend. So keep that schedule. And when you're creating it, think a little bit about how you want to manage your energy. So, there's this concept called interval training, which is after you run hard, you need a break. You can't kind of do that all day long. And so I think about, like, if you're going to do intensive writing in the morning, then maybe you need a break. Maybe, I found that, I'm cognitively better in the morning for reading and writing. So I try to push meetings to the afternoon, really thinking about the activities that you need to mix around to manage your energy, things that are kind of high intensity or low intensity. For most people, they really struggle delineating their physical workspace from their life space. So I think no matter if you're in a home or an apartment, it is really important to pick this dedicated workspace. Leave your computer there. Don't bring it into your room. Don't bring it into your bedroom. Don't carry it to breakfast. So that is your workspace, and you can kind of go into work and leave work. It also signals to other people in your home that you're working at that time, because if they see you, they think you're available. And I think it's really tough to detach from work if your workspace is the same place as you spend your free time. So this has been one of the key things for us with remote employees, is teaching them how to create that physical delineation. Similarly, as much as we don't all like being in traffic, I will say that there is some value to your morning commute. If you just jump out of bed onto your phone, it's like being dragged into the office in your pajamas, pretty much. So, get up, have your coffee or tea, make your breakfast, kind of recreate that morning routine before you turn on the computer, before you check your phone. Because unless you work in emergency medical services, nothing is life and death. And as soon as you look at that, you are sort of in the office. Similarly, you really need that time at the end of the day. I found that I was walking off of, Zoom calls after 4 hours. I was walking into a dinner with 3 kids. It was just chaotic. I didn't have that compression time. So now I go for a walk. I might meditate. I might do something else in that sort of time before dinner to sort of create that separation between, again, translating out of my workspace back into that transition space and back into my home space, which unfortunately for most of us now are all the same space. In terms of restructuring your work environment, when you move out of your home, you may realize that there are all these things that you've been carrying forever that you don't want. And rather than boxing them up, the first thing you do is get out of them. Similarly, I think moving to a remote workspace will make you realize that several of your meetings, don't work very well. They won't work in the virtual environment, and no one's enjoyed them or gotten value out of them for years. So don't just take your in-person meetings and hold them over video conference. Rethink about what you need, adapt, shorten them. I would say every meeting online should probably be 50% shorter than it was before. And one of the key meetings that you might want to get rid of right away is this notion of update meetings. So update meetings are when people just, come on and read a bunch of updates and there's no interaction and it's a lot of time and money and resources. So we use something that Jeff Bezos has popularized at Amazon, which is memos. So if meetings should be for interactivity, and if people need to get updates, provide the updates beforehand, provide a memo, ask people to read it. And then when they come to the meeting, discuss the core issues. So I think if you can get rid of these updating meetings, they usually don't provide a lot of value. And it requires getting everyone together on a call to then listen in a non-interactive way. One of the things that you could do is reprioritize, in thinking about when to use videos, is a notion of asynchronous video. So if you have a message that you want to share with everyone, what you can do is maybe record that and send it to everyone, or give them an update, or send it to them before the call. Those sort of video updates build a lot more connectivity and social connection. We try to use video for our internal calls whenever we can. I think if you're starting to get to 4 to 5 hours of video a day, there gets to be some fatigue. So you might want to take the people that you talk to regularly and have them call you on your cell phone so you can walk around or get some air. But yeah, think about when to use video, right? I mean, you can definitely use it to build rapport with people you don't know. You can send one-way videos. They're really productive. Sometimes they save a half an hour email to just send an update via email. You can record on Zoom, or there's some great other services, Loom and Vidyard. But I've used one-way video a lot during the pandemic. We have a team all around the world. And if I have an important message and I'm in the US, I don't need our APAC team to be up late at night or wake up in the morning to hear that. I can send a note, send them the video, and everyone can watch that on their own time. And this is a really big thing I think managers are struggling with. Trust is important in remote work. And I think you need to set expectations for your colleagues, manager, and direct reports for when you're available and when you're not. And remote work doesn't mean doing whatever you want. You got to be accountable. You have to be available for others, and you should expect that of your employees. It does depend on trust. And I think people will do better when you know they trust them. So it's better to trust first, but then also sort of, inspect and trust, but verify. And when something doesn't seem right, do a deep dive. But if you start by not giving trust, then I just think you'll have the wrong sort of environment. And what you really want is an environment based on outcomes. So I've talked to a lot of leaders in writing my next book and interviewing, and found that the biggest thing that they're finding is that they have to change their measurements, right? So we don't care if a salesperson makes 100 calls in a day and has no sales. We care if they sold $1 million worth that day, and we don't care how many calls they make. Well, that's easier for sales, but I think across all teams, we need to move away from metrics that encourage sort of time in seat or showing up or FaceTime, back to that scorecard of saying, hey, if you're in client service, here's the key metric. If you're in sales, here's the key metric. If you're marketing, here's the key metric. And I'm going to manage you to these outcomes. I'm not going to manage you to the inputs or try to manage your time or micromanage your time. I'm going to hold you accountable to the outputs. And this is a big shift that managers need to make, since a lot of them are used to seeing people, having in front of them, knowing they were productive, and they need to do this in a different way. So we use a lot of technology, but one of the things that we don't do is spy technology. I have a lot of people, ask me about this, and my answer is, again, we try to have a culture of trust. We treat people as adults. We expect them to act as adults. And if we set the correct outcomes and we manage according to those outcomes, we should not need to spy on people. Doing that creates a huge burden on managers, and it creates the sort of a culture of distrust. And I haven't seen a lot of great companies that are productive with a culture of distrust. So I like this notion of fly your flag, right? It's really important for every company to be transparent about who you are, what you value as an employer, and what your value proposition is. We don't hide any of these things. So our core values are own it, embrace relationships, and excel and improve. That is the DNA of someone who will be successful at our company. We are a remote work organization, so that's got to be something that people are looking forward to. We are in the client service, which is also a certain type of thing that some people like and not. And we are fast paced. And, Denise mentioned before, but we've had, real success with a lot of nice things that people have written on Glassdoor. I thought this was interesting. These are cons from people that wrote 4- and 5-star reviews on Glassdoor, trying to warn other employees about the things that are just true about our company. So working from home is great, but don't assume it's a cushy job. It's an agency, so it's fast paced, which might not be for everyone. You really need to be self-motivated to work in a company that's 100% remote and fast-paced environment with a lot of work. So it's just meant to make sure that people understand and are buying into the value proposition that we're offering, because it's not for everyone. So we're definitely entering a changing landscape. I think the expansion of remote work will change the landscape of how people continue to work and live. There's been for decades or centuries, there's been this kind of suburb to city bridge, which as people age, they kind of move towards suburban living in a lot of areas, and then are willing to commute into work. I think what we're seeing, there was a study that just done in the US that 55% of people said they're going to relocate 2 hours more away from their location. And obviously we're a little more spread out here, but I think it just shows that I think people that are going to want to maybe be in the city will be in the city, and people that aren't are going to want to try to find opportunities out. And I think companies that aren't prepared to offer those options may be caught a little flat-footed in a world that's changing and in demand of their potential employees that are changing. So a few key takeaways. Recognize how we live, work, and buy is permanently changing. And I think those who adapt quickest will do best in that environment. And recognize the possibility remote work offers managers and employees. And one of the things in terms of thinking about your strategy for remote work is that I think any strategy can work. You can ask people to come back in the office. You can ask people to be hybrid, or you can ask them, to be fully remote. But you'll probably lose some people in any of those strategies because they decided they liked one of the other methods. And then finally, remember that many of the principles needed for great remote work are actually the essentials of a great culture overall. I've seen a lot of companies struggling with remote work that I think were struggling with their culture and their operations overall, but they were able to cover it up with everyone in one place. And those cracks are sort of showing now that they're in different places. So thank you very much for having me. If you're interested in learning more, I have actually a new book coming out next month on how to thrive in the virtual workplace, both targeted towards employees and employers, and some other books, including my book, Friday Forward, which is a newsletter I start every Friday and now reaches 200,000 people across the world, a little bit of inspiration each Friday. So, and there's more information at robertglazer.com/connect. I provide a lot of links to the resources that I shared today and things that you may find helpful as you move to a remote business. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert, for your insight. So in Hong Kong, there are more than 80% of companies are SMEs. So during this challenging time, what are the cost-effective ways to keep business running smoothly and efficiently, especially during this work-from-home situation?
Yeah, I think, making sure your employees are set up with the basics they need, particularly if they're talking with clients and prospects and vendors. And that can be as simple as, do they have the right internet speed? Do they have a second monitor so they can be productive? Some inexpensive things like, buying a $50 webcam, that just maybe is HD a little better what's on their laptop, or a $20 light, just so you can see them and not in the dark. Or maybe if they don't have, it's a small apartment, maybe getting a little green screen curtain so that they can, feel comfortable with virtual backgrounds. But I think a lot of people are forced into suboptimal environments right now. Had they had more time and had companies kind of allowances, headsets another one, right? A lot of people struggle, like, there's feedback on the microphone. So this stuff is not expensive, but just making sure that people are set up well and set up comfortably to work from home, I think really helps their productivity.
Right. So, but what are the most difficult things, for management and also from staff perspective?
Yeah, the most difficult thing by far for staff is the boundaries, as I talked about. How to draw those boundaries. Like, when are you starting? When are you stopping? Where is the physical space in your environment between I'm at home and I'm at work? And for managers, it is this out of sight, out of mind. It is shifting to how do I explain what I want, set the high expectations, hold the person accountable, and then get comfortable with I can't see what they're doing every minute or every hour on that, and figure out the right cadence and points to check in and see how they're doing. It's a great exercise in delegation for a lot of managers who struggle at delegation, because you got to do the work up front. You got to explain what it is you're looking for. You got to provide the training, and then you got to give that person a little bit of rope and leeway to figure it out. But just be really clear about what good looks like and what the outcome that you're looking for looks like.
Yeah, I can't agree more about this situation. So what's your recommendations on management should do and shouldn't do?
Yeah, so as I said before, it's really hard, but I would set high expectations, but then give trust first. So I know we've all seen kind of bad examples of sort of broken trust, but think about any relationship or otherwise. If you heard of a bad thing and you started every relationship, with not from a place of trust, it's hard for it to work. So I really operate on the mantra of give trust first, but set very clear guidelines and expectations about what you expect from people. And then if that is violated, there's a consequence for that. But I think you've made the boundaries really clear. But again, I think if you come in there with this gotcha mentality from the start, then you're going to be in this kind of cat and mouse game. Like, I know some companies are managing people's, mouse strokes and click movements, and then Amazon selling mouses that move automatically. Like, this is not a arms race that you want to be into. That's just sort of a lose-lose battle.
Right. So, for example, I'm sure you've come across such cases before, right? When the staff abuse, this flexibility of working remotely. So how do you cope with this situation, especially in restoring the trust?
Yeah, look, we give a lot of trust, so it's hard when that trust is violated. If we find out that someone, has been traveling or out of the office or wasn't telling people, that's really hard to recover from, because we've set that expectation up front that here's how we expect people to act like they do in the office, which is, if it's a work day and you're going out for a coffee or something, like, we don't need to know where you are. But if you were leaving for 3 hours, you would tell someone if they were looking for you. And so we really hold people to the same standard in a remote world. Like, you can't just disappear. You can't be unavailable. But if you said to someone, hey, I'm taking 2 hours off this afternoon, here's my coverage. If you need me, call me, emergency. Like, that's fine. We want to reward the outcomes, and we're happy to flexibility, but we want them to be upfront about it, not find out afterwards that they're not there and not available.
Right. But, I think everyone should need some sort of protocol, right? From the management perspective. So how do you recommend that protocol should set? Especially the boundary. How could that be set?
I set it right up front. So if you're a manager and employee, say, hey, look, I know we're moving to this. Here are my expectations. We'll meet every morning. We'll go over stuff. I'm not going to harass you the rest of the day, but I expect that if that thing is not going to be done, or the deadline is not going to be there by the next day or otherwise, you are going to reach out to me about it. Like, I don't want to find out by the next morning that it's not done. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think all managers work in different ways. I just think the difference is now you've got to be really clear and really upfront with what it is that you expect. And that lets you hold people to high standards. You can say, look, I trust you completely, Denise, but if I find out that you left for 4 hours and you didn't tell anyone, then we're gonna have a problem. It's gonna be hard to trust you again.
Right.
And you're welcome to leave. That's the thing. Like, in our culture, you're welcome to leave or take the day off or whatever. You just tell someone. We value that flexibility. Just don't act like you're trying to get away with something, right?
So communications is the key, right?
Yeah, well, communication is usually the key to everything, right? All the breakdowns are in communication. So every manager may have different expectations or stuff. Some people may want to report twice a day in. Well, you should let people know that, and then they might decide, hey, you're not the kind of manager I want to work for if I have to report to you every hour about what I'm doing.
Right. Well, I think, can we go back to a little bit on how to build mutual trust between the management and staff?
Yeah.
Can you have some sort of solid steps that people can follow?
Yeah, I think it's up for the leader to build first. So the leader to say, sort of set their expectations of trust, not follow up and harass them, to say, hey, I'm going to trust you to do this. And, please feel I am available. Please feel free to look help for me, but you don't have to check in. I think it's always up for the leader to sort of set that tone that they want. And to tell people, it's as simple as telling them up front, like, I trust you. We hired you because you're smart, you do good work, and I don't want to micromanage you. And I trust you, but here's what I expect in return. So I really do think it's upfront, it's specific, it's a lot of communication. And it's when you have one of these things, mismatches, it's sort of having that discussion like, hey, I couldn't find you for an hour, and that's not okay. So and if you went out, why did, and you didn't tell me, like, why did you not feel comfortable telling me? And then, that may lead to realizing that they don't really believe you that you're flexible. And so you're going to have that discussion and feel that out a little bit.
Right. So from the staff perspective, what should they do really, to help build this mutual trust?
Yeah, I think it's really important for remote staff to be accountable. It's even more important that you do what you say you're going to do, and by what you do, deadlines, checking in, asking questions, because you're out of sight, out of mind. You don't want to come in, the next day with something half done and did not ask the questions. And I would really focus on being reliable and trustworthy up front and communicate your whereabouts. I know we talked before about the hike. If you wanted to go for a hike in the afternoon, it's a nice day. Say to your boss, hey boss, I'm going to check in early today, or I can work late, but I'm going to be out for a hike for these 2 hours in the afternoon. And either they're the type of boss who is okay with that or is not okay with that. But it's better that you know that than to get caught doing that, having not talked about it, because that's never going to end up in a good situation. And again, if you have someone that extends trust to you and you violate that, it's a very hard thing to repair as an employee.
That's true. So as people work from home individually, so
yeah,
that is not in the same team as it is in the office. So what are the best ways to maintain team solidarity or, the team spirit? Is there any way to do it online?
It's harder, but we've done some game nights online. We've set up games, and we set up like happy hour, or social hour, or just fun online Pictionary or stuff like that. So I think you can use the same mechanism. Ideally we would get together, but I think you can use these same tools, but just in a different way. We've had some fun cocktail hours or happy hours or trivia hours. Or even just set up coffee dates. We have a tool called Donut that plugs into our Slack, and it actually sets people up with kind of one-on-one meetings, to just social meetings to check in and maybe meet someone new and how they are. It takes a little more conscious effort, right? Because you don't have the walking by them or want to grab a cup of coffee or otherwise, but I think you got to try to schedule those impromptu social interactions. And that's where the leaders of the company or the culture team can help kind of structure and pull some of those things together.
Right. So what's the outcome from your experience?
Look, we've been doing this for a long time. And I will say one of the advantages that we have is I think everyone is on a level playing field. So we've always been fully remote. So everyone has the same training, same onboarding, same interaction. No one feels left out. I think as companies decide their strategy, they might decide everyone's coming back to the office. They may decide we're fully remote, or they may say we're hybrid, and they got to figure out what that means, right? And what those expectations are, because I think sometimes it is a struggle if a whole team is in the office and having all those interactions, and then someone is outside of that. It's kind of hard to jump into that. One of the companies that's going to be doing hybrid told me that even if people are in the office and out, when they do a call, people aren't going to do it from a conference room. They're going to do it from cubicles so that everyone feels on the same page. Many CEOs told me when I interviewed my book, what they felt was this whole experience was democratizing for their company. It put everyone on equal playing field, sort of equal tenor, equal screen. Everyone's got the same screen size, and so that's been a nice element of that. But I think it's really important for the company to figure out which strategy and then how they're going to support that and really go forward with that.
I think it's very good that you raised this keyword hybrid, because in Hong Kong, there are many companies having sales office or headquarters in Hong Kong, but then production facilities across the border. So in this situation, working from home may not be a solution for everyone. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what are the options and alternatives that companies can have?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously at the one end of the spectrum, right, you could be fully in office and not let anyone be remote. I think that's going to be fewer and far between. At the other end of the spectrum, you could be, we're going all remote, but most companies will probably be somewhere in the middle. I think, again, it's really important that they be explicit about what that means. Like, does that mean that everyone comes in the same 3 days to the office? Does that mean that people in the field, are have to work in the field and other people can work from the office? Are there certain days when they're meetings? Do they alternate? Like, I don't think you want to leave these things to chance, because these sort of norms will form like, oh, well, they said it's hybrid and we can do whatever, but these people all keep going in for that meeting. So I feel like I'm left out and I'm disadvantaged. Like I think leaders need to be really intentional in that, as you said. So who's coming in? When are they not coming in? Is there a set schedule? Is there a set policy? Or is it really just kind of open and the people can do it? But the expectations that people set are the behavior. If people start to see that the people in that meeting are getting called on more, then it's going to make it really hard for the people joining the meeting from home remotely.
Right. Well, before we wrap up this section, we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. So I've got an audience asking, what's the best way to monitor engagement and performance for teams working from home? Because he experienced almost a full-time job to motivate and organize teams, and is so draining in his energy and distracting him from our original goal and mission.
Yeah, there's some great tools out there, some HR culture tools. Culture Amp is one, Tiny Pulse, ones that can either work in Slack or Teams or WeChat. They plug into the things they're in, and they can ping your team and ask them a question, or how you doing, how you feeling this week, kind of like pulse checks. And it gives you pretty good data to monitor engagement. So we use one of those weekly, we use one quarterly, and we get pretty good data on engagement. I think this is actually an area where technology is able to come in with a little bit of that human element and let people let you know how they're doing that day, how that client's doing that day, how that situation's doing, and get that real-time feedback. Because it is a lot of work. That's one of the reasons why I'm not into the spy technology, because do you want managers to come in every morning and spend their first hour going through the employees' logs from yesterday and trying to figure out what they were doing or otherwise? Like, that's a huge added burden. So I would have shorter, quick check-in meetings. I would ask people, like we do a lot of, hey, 1 to 5, how are you on a scale of 1 to 5? 5 means you're, great. 1 means you're struggling. I've seen people even in Zoom do it, like change their name and put like, I'm a 1 today or a 5, or I'm low, I'm red, green, yellow, just so you can understand that, oh, someone's red today or they're low. Then when you're engaging with them, that they're having a bad day, or they don't, they're not really, something's going on, that they're not fully present right now.
Right. Final question. For the company with employees around the world, how could they overcome cultural change or language barriers under this new business model?
Yeah, look, it's really hard. Time zone, culture, all that stuff is interesting. I think these are open discussions that you have to have. In APAC, I did the same call this morning with our team in the US, and there were a lot of questions. One of the things we do with our team is we ask them to write down a question, to really have everyone do that, because they're not as likely to answer questions. So we've started to understand the differences with cultures and try to do some things that sort of level the playing field. And we know that, they have questions, but they might not be as comfortable as answering them, but we know that that's important. So I do think it is important to be aware of time differences, cultural differences, have those discussions. We've done cultural training in our company and understanding, different cultures, and you got to study this stuff. There are people that can help with this. I mean, we had a consultant come in and she did a great exercise about what does a discussion between this culture and that culture look like, where are they going to miss each other, and like that was pretty eye-opening for our teams. Some cultures are much more blunt, some are much more they hold back, so that's actually something if you're running a global organization, that's something you're going to have to train around and maybe bring in and get your employees used to.
Right. So this is time for change, a time to make decisions, and companies should tailor-make their own solutions for their own situations. So thank you so much for your sharing, Robert, today, and we all learned something new from you.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert and Dennis, for the wonderful session. So coming to the end, please feel free to scan the QR code on the screen to send us your feedback and stay connected with our Smart Advisor to explore any possibility. Our next session will start at 11 a.m., so stay tuned and see you later.